Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about the film The Gallows. One of the things that distinguishes a horror movie is a different kind of a concept. Like a concept you can go, oh, this is the horror movie where they go into a school where all the lights are off at night. And that sounds like a cool concept that makes you want to go, oh, I'll see that movie. That's why it's different. It's different because of this cool concept. That can both bring you in and steer you the absolutely wrong way to a pretty bad movie just with a cool premise to it. And that's kind of the Gallows problem, is because the execution of making this film as a found footage film seems like the absolute wrong idea and kills an actually pretty decent horror concept by kind of showing the thing that horror movies are also known for, which is opportunism and using a trend in a way in. You saw it a lot in the post-Halloween horror boom when you had like any idiot with a camera could put a mask on somebody and have them chase people around with a knife and shit, and they'd make a movie and could probably get it released. And Gallows kind of tries to do that, but the sad thing about Gallows is it has actually a different kind of concept that could probably work without all the found footage stuff and would make it a much better movie. It's almost like concept and the execution, or its opportunism, conflicted with each other to make a subpar movie that probably honestly would have just been a decent B-grade horror movie at best, but was probably going to be at least an enjoyable B-grade horror movie instead of what we got, which is a bad horror movie with some nice elements to it that never really lead to anywhere that makes this movie worth it. 20 years before, in 1993, during the play called The Gallows, which I don't know if it's a famous play or made for this movie, but whatever, they have videotape of this play going on, and in the end scene, this kid is like sacrifices himself for his girlfriend or something, and he has to be hanged, and when he is hanged, he is actually hanged and he dies. And then 20 years later, they're putting on the play again, mostly because of bad taste, but also because of no reason, really. They don't give a reason except for this one girl, Pfeiffer, really wanted to put it on, so they did it because none of them have souls, I guess. But it was 20 years ago, and like, why is this play so good? I don't know. But anyway, so they're putting it on again, and this one guy, Reese, who was formerly of the football team, but has now decided to be in the play The Gallows, mostly because he likes Pfeiffer, who he really very much has a crush on. But his friend Ryan and Ryan's girlfriend, Cassidy, are really not into it, and as Ryan is videotaping practically everything and leaving extremely annoying comments at all times and helping out with the play for some reason, he's constantly telling him not to and that he should get himself out of it. After he finds out there's a door that never locks, he decides to take his girlfriend Cassidy and Reese to destroy all the props and the sets for the show, and then they can't have a show, so it's not his fault and he won't be faulted by the girl he likes for the show not going on. So they go into the school at night when none of the lights are working for whatever reason, and then suddenly find themselves locked in, also with Pfeiffer, who saw their car outside and came in also, and have to kind of find their way out before the ghost of the kid who was killed 20 years before hangs them all and kills them in the school before the sun comes up. The thing about this movie is it actually has some genuinely kind of creepy, scary moments. Darkness is scary. I mean, nobody likes the dark. This is a little spookier right now because the lights are off. I mean, except for that light, but you know what I mean. It's a little scarier. It's a little creepier. It has an ambiance to it. And The Gallows, it's a cheap effect. It's an easy effect. Everyone knows you can do it, but it does it actually pretty well. This was an independently produced horror film. Blumhouse and New Line Cinema bought it later. It cost about $100,000. In a little way, it almost has its heart in the right place. There's elements in this horror movie that could really work. The found footage thing is over. It's not coming back, and we need to let it go. I guess they wanted to sell the movie, so maybe they had the idea just for The Gallows. Well, no one will buy this as just The Gallows, so we have to put the found footage crap in there. I wish that wasn't the case, because I think it's kind of a cool concept that could have probably become at least a decent kind of fun horror movie. And this does have a little bit of fun with its concept in that regard. It's almost like Project Almanac also. They give stupid reasons for why they're being videotaped, but I really wish they had just left it alone and made it kind of just a regular movie without it. And when you look at a film like Unfriended, which isn't a great movie, but at least gave an excuse for these kids to being filmed and like found an organic way to have technology be introduced. And when films like this are still around, it feels like they were trying to be opportunistic, but they like kind of waited way too long. It only had more fun with just the concept of them being in a school at night. I feel like someone someone will eventually make a really cool movie of just that. But unfortunately, The Gallows kind of fucks it up with its whole found footage thing. They have probably one of the least sympathetic protagonists I have seen in a major released film, or probably of any movie I've seen in a while. The actor Brian Shoes is so annoying and awful. He is probably the most killable character I've seen in a horror movie in a long time. I could not wait for him to get hung by this Charlie guy. I was like waiting for it. I wanted it to happen. He was the worst. He was so awful. He was making fun of people. He was being a shitty jock to people. Like, what was redeeming about him? There was nothing redeeming about him. And there was no reason for me to follow him. Right when I'm getting into this movie, you're introducing me with one of the hardest characters to get into. It automatically turned me off, and it took me a while to get into it. Thankfully, and this isn't a spoiler as much as it is a way to just kind of warn you that he does actually die first. So if you are watching the movie and you're like, God, I'm so fucking sick of this guy, don't worry, he won't be around for that long. And when he's dead, the movie gets a lot better. I don't want to see that actor in anything. I fucking hate his character so much. It's just one of the most repulsive characters I've seen in a movie. He was just so fucking awful. He wasn't funny. He was trying to be funny. He wasn't even funny in like that irritating funny way. He was just an awful, horrible piece of shit, and it just like, ugh. I was with Charlie on that one. I feel like everyone was kind of glad to be rid of that guy. He was just the worst. Apparently Kathy Lee Gifford's kid is in this, Cassidy Gifford. She was actually pretty good. I liked the other three kids actually. It's a fun little B genre film at its core, and that's when it really works. The villain, the whole Charlie thing, his whole mask is the hangman and the noose. It's not like Jason or something. I don't think it's trying to be, but it does feel like it wants to be like some sort of a horror villain, something to kind of grab you. The villain part of it didn't work. Should have just kept him invisible. I think this film is the kind of film that it's better to hide it in the darkness, and when it's a little too upfront about itself, it really just doesn't work. The Gallows is probably one of the few films I've disliked that I kind of feel bad because I kind of like elements to it. There's some bad movies you're like, man, I feel like this could have been good. That's one of the things about The Gallows that probably will bother me the most. And because of the way they did it, it just really killed it. Also, Ryan Shoes was the worst. I haven't seen anyone just ruin a movie like that. Oh my God, he was so awful. He was just so awful. His performance penetrated this movie and ripped it to shreds so you couldn't even get into it. It took me so long to get into this movie. Him also, maybe take him out. But it feels like there's kind of a fun little B genre horror film, and that's what I wanted The Gallows to be. It feels like it wanted to be that a little bit. It stopped itself for whatever reason with this found footage nonsense and one of the worst actors ever, and just made itself into just another forgettable horror movie. Instead of like a fun forgettable horror movie, it was just kind of a forgettable one that has a little bit of promise in it. I feel like there's some hope in this, but the movie itself is just kind of like a bad horror film that's even behind the times for most of the other bad mainstream multiplex horror movies we get nowadays. This is probably, unfortunately, one of the worst, but don't just disregard it. It has a little bit of heart in it. It has a little bit of horror soul, and you can kind of tell that this concept was kind of something cool, and this director kind of could have been something. But unfortunately, the evidence thus far is that it isn't, and this movie is both hard to get into and not very well executed, and it basically just represents all those bad avenues that a cool concept can lead you down. So if you have seen The Gallows and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to.